you would see things like your head picky like a pepper grain, and your lip thick and heavy like a bammy, and your nose flat and like liver, yes, and your nose flat like a bammy. And some of our relatives, even my family, used to sleep with clothespin and their nose to get the straight nose.
Yes, sir. Welcome everybody to Talk To Me, the program where we sit down with some good people and chat about them life and the work where them a do.
Talk to me, let me tell you my story. Hear a little something about the journey. A Jamaica make me. Just talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me.
This are the program Talk To Me. And me name Susanna Blair Grove. On the show today, we are talk to the great Yasso Safari. Him a one dub poet, reggae artist, philosopher, and one man who stand up for justice in a society. Him start the Jamaica Poetry Foundation in 2011, and every year from about 2003, him put on one poetry show named Poetry in Motion. And then him start one another poetry show named Jamaica Poetry Festival. Yassos work with one whole heap of big name in Jamaican music. We are talking about Freddie McGregor, Beres Hammond, Sly and Robbie, Garnet Silk, Luciano, and the Grammy-winning group Black Uhuru. Him travel all over the world to perform him dub poetry. The man full of knowledge and inspiration. In the show, we talk about how him feel and think about the Jamaican language and how him use it in a film work.
Well, firstly, we give thanks to the Most High, and we give thanks for the moment to share, speaking to language, and speaking to language as a tool of empowerment, advocacy, and liberation. Right, so depends on which bird you're talking about. I am from Prior Unity. We are spirit. We are spirit. No, not a problem. We are spirits robed in flesh. Yeah. So we are body, mind, and spirit. And it's from spirit that we are starting. Since we're talking about language, we have to be reminded that in the very beginning was the word, was that energy that which cannot be created and cannot be destroyed, but which creates. And so I was born in that first birth within the realm of the spirit, the celestial realms of the spirit. And then our first birth in terms of my understanding of life is Africa. Through the transatlantic construction and the genocide, we happened to surface in Jamaica in this time. And so that happened in the 60s in St. Elizabeth, Jamaica. So me are the road dot boy.
All right. And so in St. Elizabeth in the 60s, what was the language like? What people used to use language and what they used to talk?
So we come to that now. So if you would have looked at Jamaica and look at St. Elizabeth, where them call St. Bess, right? Now, St. Elizabeth, which is called St. Bess, is the most typical parish in the entire Jamaica. And by typical, I'll just say what I think that means. Typical in terms of the topography, the vegetation, the people, in terms of ethnic and social and racial composition, in terms of climatic conditions, in terms of levels above sea, and thing in terms of all the variations that would be typical of Jamaica. Those are embedded in St. Bess. So it's not by accident, I would think. It is called St. Bess. And so the language, again, based on that which we have just said, is reflective of that reality. And so, you have the influx of different ethnic and racial groups, from the Irish to the Scottish, and then the various amalgamation that took place. So if you look at even Treasure Beach in St. Elizabeth, for example, if you look at Bull Savannah, if you look at Cheapside, if you look at it more in the hills, you could see, let us consider this as a Jamaican language. You could see dialects. Language is comprised of dialects. You understand what I'm saying? And so in St. Elizabeth, like how you see in Montego Bay, for example, going further afield, they have a different way of saying stuff in Westmoreland. In St. Elizabeth, we say we've been a good on there. And sometimes in like Bull Savannah, Cheapside, maybe Top Hill, Flaggerman. Well, look about you too. You're ugly like a. You know, they sing something them.
Yeah.
And different words find themselves there, just like anything else, you know, just like anywhere else. For example, if you look into the UK, look at the Cockney, for example. You go in different areas, you find the same thing. So that's interesting. And so that's, as Miss Lou said, them derive, we derive too.
Yes. So all right, so you have the mix up of people, you have the part where you have the English and the different dialects in between, yeah? How do people used to interact? So like you'd have people that say, you know, like, well, currently, and we can't only talk about my time, you know, we have parents that correct you and no, talk English, don't say this, don't say that. Was that the same for you? Like your parents and the community used to have that correcting thing going on?
Largely speaking, if we generalize, but it could be a little bit more specific in the sense that, you know, so this has a lot to do with socioeconomics. It has also to do with classism. And so, you know, depends on where you're from and the family background and so on and so forth. So you find, you know, before we even go to the language, let us go to the coloration, even the complexion, and even the Afrocentric features. So you would see things like your head picky like a pepper grain, and your lip thick and heavy like a bammy, and your nose flat and like liver, yes, and your nose flat like a bammy. And some of our relatives, even my family, used to sleep with clothespin and their nose to get the straight nose.
You're serious?
And then you use the hot iron to straighten them here. You know, that time it was a curling iron. And so even though you used to have, they say you're red like a nut and red hebo. But then you used to say you're black and ugly like a sin. It was still a melting pot in terms of attitudes and prejudices still. However, in that dynamic now, you have a situation, the people who are aspiring to be more acceptable or accepted would tend towards trying to at least have the children speaking properly, as they would say it, even if themselves don't. And so, you know, it goes again to the high school. Don't forget, like in the parish of St. Elizabeth, where I'm from, you do have Monroe College, which was white only at one point, Hampton again, which was white only, and you know, the same obtains for different parts of Jamaica. If you look at Jamaica College in Kingston and so on and so forth. So those kind of aspirations would have influenced the social dynamics as well as the linguistic dynamics. So you could speak up the socio-linguistic dynamics within that positivity. And so in my home, for example, it was an interesting situation where we kind of middle ground. So we were not disallowed, but we were encouraged to be at least bilingual, even though those terms were not used.
Right.
But there was know when to speak this way and when it is okay not to speak this way. And so we were actually being tutored to navigate the linguistic and social-linguistic dynamic and continue, which I have found to be very helpful, even in this interview.
All right. so all right. So like how you have the two things now. So mommy and daddy say, yeah man, use it. Yes, so use the language there, yes, so, and use the language there over here, so. How is it then that you now get this fully positive attitude towards the patois, the Jamaican language?
Well, yes, I mean, it's an interesting question. I think maybe in the earlier days, Miss Lou, because Miss Lou kind of so larger than life, such a pleasant, grandmotherly or motherly woman. We have so much laughter, we're so infectious, where you can't help but just laughing. And then because she employed this language, it gives it a certain level of validity and authenticity, and even daring, if you may. So I think that helped. But you know, again, no, my mother was a little woman where, no sense where people are not holding kind of say the rank and cockatty, meaning them people are full of themselves, even if they teeth rotten, even if they are barefoot, even if they're hungry, even if they live in one room, you can't put them down.
No.
Them say them that catch up and eat people eye tap and then I walk off dog when I hang pan nail.
Yeah.
You ever hear that expression?
Yeah, man.
That goes to the attitudinal posture of the people and the psyche and psychology where that is concerned. So we had that kind of groundation. But outside of that now, I Rastafari faith and certainly the teachings of Marcus Garvey would have helped in that empowerment. So we realize that we are smart picking it too. And then no matter how we talk, these are the currency we feel that we pack it and we not borrow our big our teeth. So we are going to use what we have.
Right.
I might not have articulated it that way coming up, but it was embedded in my attitude. Yeah. And so it's that attitude which I had that I'm articulating now. So therefore, we recognize from fairly early out that you think in the language that you speak. And the language that you speak shape and dictate your thinking.
Yes, yes.
And so when you look at the transatlantic genocide, you would have, and when you look at any other system of colonization, you would recognize that language, maybe more than anything else, the only other thing equivalent and attendant to that would be the army and socio-economic machinery, possibly religion as well. Those are used as tools of down pressure.
Yes.
And so we recognize from early that to reverse the thing, to reassert ourselves, then we have to use language as a tool of upliftment and reconstruction and so on. So we use language, especially from the Rastafari perspective. In my book called Overstanding Rastafari, Jamaica's Gift to the World, we do have a chapter that deals with Rastafari lexicon, language. I think Velma Pollard loosely referred to it as dread talk.
Yes.
We don't subscribe to the dread talk idea, but we overstand and we identify and we empathize with a choice of expression. However, we recognize now that, you see, just like if you go into the Bible from your biblical student as well, even St. John 1 verse 1 said, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word confession dwelt among man. That is interesting, especially if you juxtapose that with quantum physics or even the idea of what energy is. Energy cannot be created and cannot be destroyed, but it can be transformed from one state of existence to the next. If you link that to numerology, 0 is the unqualified state of everything, and everything is simply a qualification of nothing. So from 0 to 9, and you go to 10, which is really 0, you start the cycle again, and 11 becomes 1, and 12 becomes 2. So therefore, we see words as really spirits, and the language is really dispensing the spirits. And so the colonial experience, to me, against that backdrop, would really be casting a demonic spell, which I describe as neuro-linguistic sorcery.
Yes.
So language of the heart is really meant to cast away the evil spell of neuro-linguistic sorcery and to imbue authentic spirituality, neuro-linguistic currency of spirituality into a people and into a culture, into a livity, so that we can resurrect ourselves and reborn ourselves, because we are the people in transatlantic construct that were crucified on the international cross of slavery and colonialism and buried into the sepulchre of death and captivity, and the tomb conspired with us and became a womb and give birth to I, the only authentic and holistic and indigenous response to that crucifixion of colonialism and death and slavery. So our language is the essence of that renewal.
Yeah. So the resurrection, the language of the resurrection of who we were. I get you.
And cast away the evil spell, me say, neuro-linguistic sorcery.
Yes.
By the spirit of the new tongue, the new word, the new thinking, the new concept, the new worldview, the new spectacles of looking at self and the world and everyone else.
Right. Right, I get you. All right. Wow. So it go hand in hand then, the language and the dub. So
interesting. All right. No, don't stop you. The language and the dub.
So me, when you tell me, if them go hand in hand, the language and the dub music.
Yes, I mean, that's a brilliant way of putting it. Totally agree. What happened now, you know, because they are essentially the same thing. You say, let me show you something. We have an event in Mandeville called Poetry in Motion, which is the longest running and most successful annual poetry event in the history of Jamaica.
So you have it in Kingston too?
We have Jamaica Poetry Festival in Kingston. We're going 12 years.
Different name, right.
Yeah, why I reference Poetry in Motion is because we say music, dance, and comedy, storytelling, fashion, and poetry. And why we say that is that even in my workshops I've done across the world, we have the integrated arts approach to workshop because all the artistic expressions within the spectrum are really using different instruments to do exactly the same thing. In other words,
yes.
I was saying to Ernie Ranglin the other day, who was our Jamaica Poetry Festival 2021 Lifetime Achievement Awardee, one of Dr. Velma Poland was the other. We were saying to him, listen, he must say, but I'm not a poet. I must say, excuse me, who said you aren't? You write with the strings of your guitar. Just like Professor Clinton Hutton would write in colors and lines. Just like a dancer would write in movements. Just like a camera person would write with the lens. The videographer would write with the camera. So in other words, no, dub now, if you look at what dub is, remember I said dub is a standard dictionary word, you know, which means to take out and to put in. So you dub out and you dub in. Okay. So if you look at even King Tubby's and the other dub scientists, them strip down the thing to bare essentials, because there's a sense of urgency to our struggle. So we are dealing with bare essentials, skin and bone operation. So them strip it down and come at you with the hard drum and bass to jerk your heart and to shake you up. Like when your mother shake you, why be shake my sense in you? So them the earth shaking drum and bass, I feel reset it. You hear about the mental reset that I talk about?
Yes.
That's what I talk about. So hear this now. What you do with the dub now, you know, is to dub out the pretension, highfalutin, elitist, walk on ear, kind of pretentious illusion, to ground you with the reality. You know what I mean? Strip away the fantasy and make you deal with the living naked reality. And so when you juxtapose the dub with our poetry, remember the poetry suffer the same indignity as what the reggae music and the other things and all our cultural African Afrocentric expression encountered. And so, you know, the speak is pokey, talk like you lift your upper lip stiff like them, put starch on it. I like you more British or brutish than the English. And like you speak is pokey and you ray. So we come with a form of poetry, you know, we kick them pretension then at the short ribs.
All of that.
And bust down them barrels and boundary and deal with the thing real because it's a language of the heart. So even when one of my poem named Patwa Target, we say, I go down the street and my friend Muta Baruka, if you borrow Muta Baruka foot and you go down the street and Makajuku in it, you think you're going to have a time to say, oh, a thorn pierced my flesh. Clothes and skirt, Makajuk me.
Yeah, same so.
Language of the heart. You don't have the time to go pretend and fix up your upper lip. So this is what it is. So when you merge dub now, the poetry of I and I, the people, grassroots people, the resurrected people, the reasserted people, the reawakened slumbering giants of Africa and the First Nation and indigenous peoples of the world. And you link that with the music, we have the same attitude, rank like Rambo and peace attitude. They are smart, they picking it too. Attitude. Yeah. You're not better than me. Attitude. Your pieces can't make tasty patty. Attitude. So when you mix them things there now, when I look friend with people and when I take prisoners, we are juked in your eye and your ears and your nose with it.
Yeah.
And you can't run with neither because we are working with the omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresence of the Almighty because He's the architect and the author of our resurrection. I don't know if you understand me, I try to say,
May I get you, you know? May I get you? I don't know if I get highlight, but may I get you? May I feel
I'm why you see what me I say, because that is one of the most significant expressions that speaks to what language is. Because remember, when we do with words, you know, paint images, you know, and teletransport you to the experience so that you can smell what me I talk about. You can feel it, you can see it, you can touch it, you can experience it. You did it.
Yeah.
Are the closest thing to being there.
Sure. Woo, me like it. You make me feel the spirit, man. Oh no. So yeah, I said the language then. The language, so the music are the vehicle and the language are the power.
Yes, you could say it that way, but we could say it another way. It's like the strands of the DNA, the helix. That synergy, them interdependent. One is impotent without the other. So when they marry, they become one. You're a married woman, so you're supposed to know that too. It's a copulation and a union, and it's a oneness. You know them way. So the two of them are vehicle, and the two of them have the power. In other words, no, me overstand I said the music are the vehicle, but don't forget, based on what I've just said a while ago, the music speak too. In other words, look here, stick up here. Let us go to Ethiopia for a moment, and let us look at a word called mabrak. Mabrak means lightning and thunder. The one word. And let us go to physics and examine lightning and thunder. They emanate from the same source, so they are essentially the same thing. They travel by different genre. They travel, one travel in the auditory dimension and one travels in the visual dimension. So together they are the audio-visual, but they are essentially the same thing. Let us go to chemistry and look at water. The chemical formula of which is H2O. So be it solid, liquid, or gas, it does not change its essence. It is still H2O. Same thing with lightning and thunder, because sound, if you look at the sound wave, sound travel, like the sound wave, it don't travel in a straight line. Lightning is more a straight line, so it moves quicker. Exactly. Because the shortest distance between any two is perpendicular. Now, so essentially, so the same thing applies in this reasoning now to the music and the word sound, to the dub poetry, for example, to the reggae singer, to the DJ, to the spoken word, whatever you want to say. And I was saying earlier, in the spectrum of the creative arts, we can reverse engineer any expression within the spectrum and produce the other. So in other words, in my workshop, you can start from a poem, a letter, a composition, a skit, a dance, a photograph, a painting, a mime, a song, an instrument, musical composition, and we can reverse engineer that and give you a poem from that painting, a poem from that musical composition. Let us look at even music. Let us look at singing. By definition, you know, of necessity, every song starts out as a poem. A song is a poem set to music by definition. So every single song is a poem.
Yes.
Not every poem is a song. So put it this way now. If the 1 cent don't have a value, the $5,000 bill not no value neither. You know?
True.
So even the Ministry of Culture and the University of the West Indies, me a charge the item. You know, if you can start revisit poetry, because the intimacy and potency that poetry has within the currency of language is crucial, because the human ability and faculty of speech and reasoning, those were embedded at the dawn of our existence in what I describe as poetic and genetic memory codes. So what us as inspired intuitive poets are doing, you know, is really to excavate the retentive memory in poetic memory codes.
But what about the people them say earlier that say, you know, would think or always, well, We speak how we think how we speak, eh? But not for it, myself, all throughout high school I come up at English writing. So whenever me sit down to write one poem, I can't write in a patois. No matter how I love patois, no matter how me talk it regular, I can't write one poem where makes sense in a patois. I can't get to the feeling in a patois. So me say, what would I need then? Well, for me, to get to that place where when we sit down, can write patois without any intervening thing. Tell my mind, say, all right, yeah, write patois, don't write English.
Right, I understand. All we have that struggle somehow. But listen now, don't forget that we are a rebirth people, not resurrected people. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the human journey, if you look at the linguistic journey of humanity, in society, our culture, our people, for that matter. If you look at even the legal system, everything started out from the oral tradition. That's why them say common law give birth to the other thing. And so the thing started from, if you look at one of the oldest languages known to man, which is Geese, it incorporates gesticulation. Mm-hmm. And if you look at hieroglyphics, and so you will see that, you know, at the very dawn and of certain movement, people really were just, it's almost like you have how you see in talk of pidgin language, you're just trying to make do with communicating feeling and what you're thinking. And so at this stage of our struggle, we'll have that most conflict because a reflection of the socio-economic and social-political dynamics. We are people who are in a schizophrenic reality. We are literally and figuratively caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. And so we'll have that struggle. But one thing I would think, you know, is the language of the heart, you think in the language that you speak, and the language that you speak shape and dictate your thinking. But remember, so the language of the heart emanate, your language emanate from that experience. So language is experiential. This language, which is a part of the colonial construction, is not experiential, it is an imposition. So that is important. And so you have to consciously re-engineer your own mindset and your own thinking and recalibrate it and realign as well. And you have to choose your point of reference in terms of your realignment. Yeah. But in an event, one quick way of doing it would be to, since you speak the language more than you write it, think of your feelings in the way you speak and try to describe the language in the way you speak. For example, when you go to church, you're not supposed to talk to God in a patois. And God not depend that because God knows what you say before you open your mouth.
Yes.
And God operating at the heart and know the secrets of your heart and know the secrets of your mind. And then know you're not supposed to talk to the Prime Minister and the Governor General and the teacher in the way how you really feel. So then why you have to be a hypocrite and a pretentious lying person. Mm-hmm. I mean, it sounds strong for me to say that, but in essence, and when you strip it down to the reality, that's what it is.
Yeah, it is.
So you know, I mean, we have to kind of work at yourself in that way and shift your mindset and find, you know, talk to yourself and use your different point of reference to empower yourself personally to know that this currency which you have is what you have and you're going to use it to the best of your ability to acquire any other currency that you may need.
All right.
All right, let me show you something now. All right. Mm-hmm. When we were going to school, right? And you talk bad, which is what they call the language.
Yes, bad.
Then put you in a corner, you know, and you have to kind of hold your ears and your foot.
Yes.
If you go into Wales, they have something called the Welsh Knot. Have you heard about the Welsh Knot?
No, what that?
One big piece of board with two holes at the two sides. And they have one piece of card, tie on panel like a pendant. Like you see the pendant where the DJ them used to wear and the rapper them in America wear. Mm-hmm. So they have one big piece of board, nothing that look good or attractive, you know. And a big too, and heavy too. And then put two holes at the two end. And put one string over it and then put it around your neck. So if them church, if you be a snitch and if you be an informer, when they catch you attack in your native Welsh or your Jamaican, then put that around your neck. Mm-hmm. And if you identify another student who are chat bad as what them say, then put that round for them neck whoever get it, end up with it at the end of the week and then get the beat and the other punishment.
Oh.
So this is our equivalent of the Welsh Knot. And so that was how the native language, the language of the heart, was suppressed and downpressed and relegated to less than and inferior, because it belonged to an inferior person. Because remember, in the construct of the transatlantic genocide, our people were regarded as chattels, and you know the definition of a chattel. A chattel is an object at the behest of its owner.
Yeah.
That's why they couldn't commit pedophile on the children with them rape. Now they couldn't commit rape on the woman with them too. Now they couldn't commit murder. And that is why the emancipation was a fiasco in how it translated in certain sense, because the former colonial enslavers were compensated, but not the enslaved. If you look at the reality in Haiti, that is at the heart of the struggles of the Haitian people, because of the audacity to free themselves of the yoke and indignity of French colonialism and slavery. And they were gang raped by the colonial clique at the time, and turned upside down figuratively and literally, and shake out every cent out of them pocket. And so what we're doing with the language is a struggle between dignity and indignity, you know what I mean? Between, you know, accepting our self-worth and self-esteem and our value, both spiritually and linguistic and culturally and experientially and whatever else. So it's a struggle. And so we all have a struggle individually, and we have a struggle collectively to reassert the language, and not just a language, but all of our human expressions, you know what I mean? In terms of the way we eat, in terms of our relationship with the Almighty God, in terms of relationship with each other, in terms of our relationship with the universe, in terms of how we look at ourselves, in terms of how we look at others, in terms of how we teach others to look at us. Oftentimes you have to teach people how to deal with you, and they start by how you deal with yourself.
Oh, yes. All right, before we start recording, that tell me about Miss Lou using the language as currency. So you that make differentiation between what we do at JLU, the Cassidy JLU writing system, and what you and Miss Lou do with the language, the dialect. So I don't know if you can go back into that.
Well, in the first place, remember, you know, your language is a currency, linguistic currency. The essence of your mind and your soul, the breath of the people. You know, we are social beings. There's a social breath of the people. No, so we all use that currency to some extent. Some of us own different currencies, just like how you could have different bank accounts with different currencies. So it's, you know, you could be bi-ar, tri-ar, multilingual. So you utilize different currencies. But okay, what we see now, they try to put down our language as being dialect, as being Creole, as being patois. And patois is all derived from French to some. I don't know where that comes from. But anyway, so they have these different things to put us down. The different people do the same thing, because as we just said earlier, I mean, you're thinking the language that you speak, and the language that you speak shape and dictate your thinking. So for people, if they control the heavens and control the language, they have to impose their language upon you. So they force a currency upon you, a currency that is alien to your psychosocial reality. That's an integral part of the deconstruction. And so now, if you look at what they describe as the Jamaican dialect or Jamaican Creole, if you look at even in Jamaica, for example, in South St. Elizabeth, as against North St. Elizabeth, as against Westmoreland, as against Montego Bay, there are different dialects. And if you look in the England, like the Cockney people, London people speak different from the people up north in Huddersfield and Liverpool and elsewhere. Yes. So these are hallmarks of languages. And so because them don't want we equal up with them say, you know, their thing is derived. That's why Miss Lou push back on them and say, if them derive, we derive too. Because all of these languages that are now accepted were once described as dialect Creole and less than, just like anyone else. And so oftentimes, you know, if you look at the reality of it and the history of it, what qualifies and validates and authenticates a language have more to do with the size of the army of the speakers of that language and them socio-economic and political power, rather than the raw reality of the language. So So in a sense now, if you look at make a comparative analysis with what Miss Lou does, and people like myself, John Andrew Hutchinson, among others, is what they loosely call patois, or the Jamaican dialect or Jamaican Creole. But what that does really, you know, is employ a different currency, essentially. Just like you look at pidgin, there's an urgency and an expedience. And so we just a grab what we can find at the moment, to say what we have to say. Now, Cassidy, for example, which again is interesting because he's a Canadian, and language evolve and emanate from a people. We can't say you can't get some help from outside, because we are social beings within the nation and within the global nation state. However, it is imperative for many reasons for the language to evolve and emanate organically. However, be that as it may, because the system imply a whole different set of currency. So what we do now, we more imply the English and doctor it up. In a kind of urgent emergency, state of emergency way, to push back and to articulate and to help yourself and to defend yourself linguistically. But the other now is using a currency with a different grammatical construction. So essentially, they don't really use so much elements of the English, but we incorporate both elements of the English, elements of Spanish, elements of African retention, which essentially I think is a healthy part for the organic evolution of the people, because the language, you know, is a social, psychic, psychological, spiritual, cultural indicator of our accumulated experiences and of our conscious development and awareness. So in other words, now you pick up this whole bundle and a problem and experiences on your journey. But you know, go far with enough of them not necessary. You have to unlearn them. So just like in this 21st century, it is equally important to learn as to unlearn and to upload and download. So, you know, language is dynamic. Anytime the language becomes static, you're dying. Because language is the social breath of the people, is the soul of the people. And so we think that the University of the West Indies is no insult to you people, but only still, if you come down from this whole iconic, elitist, stiff British upper lip illusion, and relate to the people at the grassroots, because it's 2019. The University of the West Indies secretly changed the visitor to a Queen's Council from Barbados, and them do it secretly too, and them know why them do it clandestine. Up to this day, enough people who are going to the university don't even know what a visitor to the university is. So the university is still betraying the struggle by not consciously decolonizing the institution and the attendant trappings and elements and components of the institution, be it education, language, or social, political, how the people see themselves, or the people look at themselves as a bastion of the tertiary education in the country. And we know we stand up internationally as well, but there are people that stand up great anywhere you put it. So therefore, we need greater things, and too much is given, much is required. So much more is required respectfully, and with gratitude as well from the University of the West Indies in that regard as well. And so we need to come to the people. Why do you think them have the French concept of embourgeoisement theory? Why do you think them have the middle class idea? We have to meet at the crossroads of time. And so you are from the grassroots and you say you up front this or at the branches. But if you get say branches of in the earth and into you start disassociate yourself at the earth and dead, you're dead. So the university come sit at the feet of the mashmouth grandmother where can't read and write. And the mashmouth grandmother can't read and write. If sit in the halls of the University of the West Indies and sit at the UE feet as well. That is how we are creating oneness of the people. Because we all have a story to tell. And the first man will develop the first language. Him learn it from the people will never write a language. The same thing applies to the Bible and the dictionary of any form or any variation of literature. So we cannot pretend as if to say we're born big. We never born big. We used to defecate and urinate by ourselves too. Hey. Some people can go on like that. The same thing applies to the individual, applies to any institution and any nation. I don't know if you have something I say.
I gotta give me some structure going to hear the philosopher come out of you. All right, so the last thing I asked you, because we're going over 10 now. So, Mr. say, when we go on your website, them say author, philosopher, reggae artist, and social advocate. No, you know, tell me about this project we do with the Welsh, but why you just talk about how our struggle? Because I know so the language thing, as I say, is the languages that don't have the backative where I feel struggle for say, yeah man, look on we. But other languages where you that feel say, them should have all right because of who talk it, them have the struggle too. So more you just tell me again for the recording about the Welsh and that language down there.
Well, I mean, I started going to Wales about 15 years ago. And we find some similar experiences. And we now go to New Zealand and Australia in particular. Some other places too, because they struggle in Scotland, that largely dissimilar. And so what the Welsh people do, for example, starting their process of reasserting the language and the value of the people attendant to the language, they mandate by law that all the signposts have to be in both languages. And if there is a conflict, the language of the Welsh get preeminence. The utility bills, all the acts of parliament and all official documents must be in the language of the people and also in English based on the relationship and history with the English. And so that sort of empowerment, we see how we do a lot for the Welsh people. And also we are learned about the Welsh Knot, which we referred to earlier, and compared to our version of the Welsh Knot. So what we did from time to time, a whole range of projects we have done over the time. And currently we're doing one now with the language. And we did some set of workshops between Penn and Castle in Clarendon, because incidentally, Pennant got its name from one of the enslavers in Wales. And so I went and meet the Richard Douglas Pennant. If you go on the BBC website, you see me and him together. That was a huge project that we did at Menai Bridge, one of his properties, and we made as his castle in Wales, trying to, address the healing that is necessary between our people, both with the language and economics and politics, right? And so what happened is that that sort of thing now, whereby we go to the school there, and then we went to the schools in Wales, and I used the workshop to excavate the expressions of the students in the language. In the case of Jamaica, in the Jamaican language. But if they're not competent and feel better, they're writing anything they want to write. But we gave them, sort of reassurance and the comfort and some of the skills to excavate in their own raw emotions and feelings, and to feel good doing that in a respectable, responsible way as well. And the similar thing we did with the people, the students in Wales. And so we have an anthology called Building Bridges. So what we do is use the poetry to build bridges between the people. And we first did this at Uplands Junior High when I was the poet in residence for the city of Wolverhampton some years ago. And we did what with Uplands Junior High, and that was very successful. So we're repeating the same thing here. And then now what we're doing now, we have a new project now doing where we're merging now that linguistic experience with the historical and cultural experiences as well. So integrating, language inseparable from the culture. And so we want to register and record not just the expressions in poetry as it relates to the language, but we want to juxtapose that with some of the historical narrative and experiences and the interplay between both, and how both can be used to further empower our respective peoples. And so, that's an interesting project, which I'm totally excited about. And I've been so inspired, and I've learned so much from the experience, and we remind ourselves and reaffirm how important it is. And the work speak for themselves, and the experiences and the testimonies that we evaluate, and we did the impact assessment as well. So the knowledge and the attitudinal changes, the outlook and the perspective and the behaviors, they have all changed positively.
Nice.
You see what I say?
Yeah. We always know the language, you know, I really, once we could get the language thing right in Jamaica, all the things can go on for you. But as you know, we still get fight from our government. Them not really take we on seriously. But we will continue to do a thing, try to talk to them and go around them, talk to the people, and, you know, get stuff done. So always a pleasure talking to you, Yasos, full of so much knowledge and just spirit. So just thank you again for this interview, for sharing. Yasos Safari, author, philosopher, reggae artist, dub poet, and social advocate. Bless up.
Give thanks, sis. Love and honor and prosperity. It's an equal pleasure and honor as well. Very inspirational and motivational, and we hope it can help in what you're doing and help to do what we have been talking about, to empower people and refocus at the same time to bring about healing for us and for them and for all of us, because we are inhabitants of one planet. We are inhabitants of one shared origin and one shared history. And we'd like to think that one shared existence and shared destiny. So this is what we are doing with the language, just ways and means if we navigate the dynamics so that we can find a formula to harmoniously and peacefully coexist in this space, irrespective of our languages and cultures and religions and way of my life and social modalities. We breathe the same breath of life. We are children of the same planet, Mother Earth. So as usual, honor, love and prosperity, one earth, one love, one humanity. So we say Rastafari, bless it and set it. Give thanks.
See there, everybody. Yasos tell me about neurolinguistic warfare and the power where language have. Him say for him, the music and the word them go together. The two of them together help bring out the art of what him want to say to people, and him use them to teach the world. If you listen to the program on the Braadkyaas Jamiekan YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe to the channel, yeah? And if you like the program, just click on the thumbs up button under the video and click the little bell on the side so you know anytime we post one new show. My name is Susanna Blairgrove, and you just don't listen to Talk to Me.